Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. Here you will learn all things related to healing from divorce, mind, body, and spirit, so you can create a beautiful new life filled with happiness. I'm Rachel Ruby, author of Divorce to Bliss, divorce coach, speaker, and attorney, and I'm so glad you found me here. Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. I'm Rachel Ruby. And today we are going to talk about the secrets to happiness after divorce. And I have the perfect guest for this. Her name is Debra Stangl, and she was once a stressed out divorce attorney and in an unhappy marriage. And she is now the founder of Sedona Soul Adventures, which is recognized as Sedona's best private retreat for individuals and couples. She's also the author of Journey to Happy, How Embracing the Concept That Nothing is Wrong Can Transform Your Life, which is a must-read for creating your own reality. And her new collaborative book, How to Have a High Vibe Relationship, will be released soon. Get ready for some serious inspiration and maybe even a few cosmic nudges here as we speak with Debra. Thanks, Debra, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Rachel. It's really great to be with you.
Great to have you here. And I have to say that Debra is gifting to all the podcast listeners and viewers a free copy of her book, The Journey to Happy, because she wants people to experience these life-changing concepts, some of which we will talk about today. So at the end of the show, we will have the link on screen. We'll also have it in the show notes for those of you who are listening and for those of you who are watching. So please take advantage of that and pick up that book, and hopefully it's going to bring you some great tips and tools. So Debra, I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about your own personal journey to happy and how you got there.
Well, it was a long journey, Rachel. As you said, I was a burned out, stressed out divorce attorney. I had been an attorney for 20 years. I loved the part where I was helping my clients, but that only felt like about 10% of what I was doing. The rest of it was fighting the system and just fighting the other attorneys. And in 1999, I really hit a low point in my life. Oh gosh, you know how when one part of your life isn't working, it starts to affect really everything. And I was in an unhappy marriage. I weighed over 40 pounds more than I weigh now. I was $50,000 in debt because of some bad business decisions that my now ex-husband had made, but I was responsible for because we were married. And I came to Sedona for what I thought was going to be just 3 days of being quiet. And instead, I did one session. And in that session, this is a little far out, but this is what happened. The Egyptian goddess Isis appeared to me in a vision, and she said, "You either leave your law practice now or you're going to die like your mother did."
You got the chills.
Yeah. And I was exactly the age that my mother was when she got sick and died 5 years later from cancer. And I could see that I was on the same path. I felt hopeless and helpless and stuck. And I went home and I spent 2 weeks with my lawyer brain trying to figure out how I was possibly going to leave my law practice because I was supporting both of us. We were $50,000 in debt and no money in savings. And I spent 2 weeks trying to figure that out. And then there was this one day where I did a meditation and I just went into this place of surrender. And I literally said, "God, I am going to do this, but I got to have some help." And within just hours, I got a phone call from one of my former clients whose case was finished. I don't know why this guy called me. And at the end of the call, he told me that he had just started a new business refinancing mortgages. And I said, "Oh, could you help me get my mortgage reduced?" He calls me back in 10 minutes and says, "I can get your mortgage payment cut in half. And I can get you $50,000 in cash." Now, nobody knew that I was $50,000 in debt. I was ashamed of it. And that I really took that as my first sign. And I spent 6 months closing my law practice. I then spent the next 3 years going out to Sedona, kind of half time. I'd go for like a month at a time. And every time I came out, I was doing really deep healing work with the different practitioners that I was finding here in Sedona. And then 2 weeks before 9/11, I was here doing a session, and suddenly Isis appeared in a vision again and said, it's time to move to Sedona. And I'm like, for what? And I went home. I sold my house in 3 days. They told me it would take 6 months. I moved here, sat here for 6 months going, okay, I did what you told me to. Now what? And they started showing me that coming here and working one-on-one in private with the amazing practitioners here, that's what had changed my life. Before, I had read a million books. I had gone to workshops and seminars and group retreats, and I had done years of therapy. And the thing that really, really changed my life was working one-on-one in private with these amazing practitioners. And they showed me how I could condense what had taken me 3 years and put it into 3 or 4 days. And so that's what I did. And that was 23 years ago. And we started with 10 practitioners. We now have over 50. And literally, even after all these years and all these thousands of people, I'm still amazed at what happens.
Okay, so, oh my goodness. First of all,
I have a lot to unpack.
what a phenomenal story. Okay, so first of all, I have to say that you are a goddess, and thank you for all that you do to help people and inspire people. And I love that we talk a lot on this podcast about listening to our intuition, listening to what comes from here, because as you know, when people go through divorce, it can be usually it's such a stressful time, such a time of a lot of emotions, a lot of negativity, right? And so I talk to so many people who don't listen to those signs. And I myself always had amazing intuition my whole life. Even when I was a kid, I remember crazy things and seeing things before they happen and weird stuff. But when in the last years of my marriage, I kind of buried that. I wasn't listening to anything. And so when you listen, and the fact that you listened so early on in your process is amazing, because I tell so many people, once you start listening, things just open up for you, like the phone call and, the messages and the visions. I mean, people might think that sounds woo-woo, but I guarantee you it happens all the time if you pay attention, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I have to admit that I wasn't listening right away. And, especially when you are going through a divorce or you're going through a hard time, it is so easy to shut that down. And so literally what was happening for me for 5 years, I would pray and meditate. And actually I was complaining, but I would say, God, I'm so unhappy. Please tell me what to do. And I would hear this little voice that would say, you need to leave your law practice. And instead of listening to that, I would actually get angry. And I would say, how can I possibly leave my law practice? I'm $50,000 in debt. I'm our sole support. I have no money in savings. And instead of listening to that voice, it just kept getting worse. My life just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And it wasn't until they said it to me in a way that I could hear it, which was, you either leave now or you're going to die like your mother did. Then I really, really heard it. And after that, that was really kind of the impetus where I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm gonna start listening to this and acting on it and see what happens.
Yeah. And of course, when before you started listening, you were staying in your law practice and continue on. I did the same thing. I was unhappy too. I was staying in my marriage. I was doing the same thing, hoping it'll fix itself, right? But you and I both being former attorneys, I think we just have that in us to just kind of fix a problem, right? But I know that you were acting at that time initially from fear, because fear of leaving, fear of changing, fear of the unknown, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Even after you had gone to Sedona all those times and you kept getting those nudges to move to Sedona, you probably thought, for what? And that was more fear, right? Yeah. So that's wonderful that you finally
started
listening to the fear.
And so the minute I did, and now it's to the point where when I don't listen to it, even in the smallest things, like, take this with you. And I'll think, no, I don't need that. And then I'll get to where I'm going. And it was like, I need it. Or, turn here or go here or whatever. And every time, even on the smallest and the biggest things, when I don't listen, that's when I'm in trouble. But I'm really, really, really good at listening now.
Same with me. Same with me. So let's talk a little bit about, you say that we create our new reality in every moment. I love that. And so how can somebody start the path to creating a joyful and fulfilling new life, especially when it comes to releasing what you call the gunk? Let's talk a little about that.
So it really starts with the understanding and the knowing when you finally get that. And this is again, not woo-woo. This is Einstein. This is quantum physics. Einstein proved, and quantum physicists continue to prove, that everything is energy. So even, my body, my arm, the chair I'm sitting in, the computer that's in front of me, it feels so real and so solid. But what we know now, there's no question that all of this, everything, is just a bunch of subatomic particles running around in space. Okay. So when you understand that, first of all, that makes things much more changeable and much more malleable. I have another amazing story about that, of releasing over 40 pounds without diet or exercise in 5 weeks. And that's all about energy and releasing the energy of, I hate my body, and coming into the energy of, I love my body. So if you start with the belief and the knowing of the scientific principle that everything is energy, then you start to understand, well, okay, I can have an impact on that energy. And there's all these scientific studies also that show, Dr. Emoto's work, where people would sit in front of water and feel the emotion of anger, and the water crystals would freeze into these horrible shapes. But when people would sit in front of the water and feel bliss and joy and happiness and peace, they would turn into beautiful, beautiful, fabulous crystals. So when you understand, I can affect my reality and everything that is going on. And think about it. We go through our day where you can either feel horrible and awful, and the minute you start really giving into the horrible and awful, haven't you noticed how more and more horrible and awful things happen to you? But on those days when you started off and you're happy and blissful and you feel really connected and really happy, then all these wonderful little synchronicities start to happen. And you might think of a friend that you haven't thought of for a while, and it suddenly she'll text you or call you. So when you start to understand that we really have an impact on our energy, and it's with our thoughts and with our feelings, and especially with our words, then you understand how you have an impact about absolutely everything. And then you start looking at things like people who think they're broke all the time or talk about being broke all the time are broke all the time. People who talk about being sick all the time pretty much are sick all the time. People who keep marrying the same person over and over and over again, which is something that I kept seeing in my law practice. They just keep marrying the same person over and over again because they're stuck in that energy of something like, I can't have what I want. I can't be happy. I can't have the relationship of my dreams. So once you start to believe this, and especially once you start to play with it and practice it, it can be absolutely astounding. And so when you understand that, and when you take responsibility for it, because that's really the great thing. The bad news is you're creating your reality the way you want it.
Yeah.
But the great news is if it's not the way you want it, you can uncreate it and you can create what you want.
Yeah.
And the minute you start believing that, it's amazing. Another person that I love to quote other than Einstein is that other new age guru who's so woo-woo, Henry Ford.
So
He said there's two types of people in the world. those who think they can, and those who think they can't, and they're both right. So all of this is something that people who have been super successful are the people who have known this. Mm-hmm. And they take responsibility for every part of their life. And once you do that, that is when the magic happens.
Yeah. 100%, 100%. And so I talk about this a lot on the podcast. And one of my favorite authors and people to quote is Shakti Gawain. I'm sure you may have read some of her.
Absolutely. Back in the 80s.
And she talks about, it's still so relevant today, but
absolutely
exactly what you're saying. It's the desire, the belief, and the expectation is what she says. And you need to have all those three things. So you have to desire, you have to want whatever it is you want. If you're coming out of divorce and you have an unhappy marriage, you have to want to be happy. And that's the easy part, right? Because we can want to be happy. We can want to be thin. We can want to be rich, whatever. I mean, we could say, I want all day long. But you also have to believe you can have it, which is a lot of people have to work on that because that comes down to confidence, right? And whether you feel like are deserving. And so that's the belief. And then there's the expectation, which is the third part, which is so important because you have to expect it's going to happen if you desire it and believe in it, right? So once you put those three things together, it's like this magic. And I agree with you that there's so many people that just say, oh no, I'm going to be happy one day, or I'm going to be thin.
I did that forever.
Right. Because we tell ourselves it's so much easier to blame and to just, yeah. And so you have to go through this journey. It's the whole point. The reason it's called a journey. People say, well, how long is this going to take? And I just, if you put work into it and you work really hard, it won't take as long as maybe somebody else who is having a harder time. And there's a lot of tools you can use to help you, but you have to do the work. And yeah, so we have the same message and it's beautiful.
And the part for me that has been so wonderful and so rewarding has been with my work with Sedona Soul Adventures. What I have discovered after all of these years of working with people is that, just as you said, you've got to have the desire and the belief. And all of that, again, is energy and vibration. One of the things that's just been so rewarding with working with all of this, because you're exactly right, everything is about desire and expectation. It's all energy and how you're vibrating. But what I have found over these years of working with people, and you had asked me about the gunk earlier, and this is really where this comes in, is that in my experience of over 40 years of working with people, what I've really discovered is that all of us have what I call gunk: core wounds, traumas, limiting beliefs, behaviors, patterns, even generational issues, all of this that are causing the trouble or holding us back. And for a lot of people, they don't even know what it is. And so this is a big thing that we do. This is the thing that we do with Sedona Soul Adventures is we work with people one-on-one or two-on-one with couples to really find and release and heal the gunk. Because, your gunk is different than my gunk. And even when a couple comes to us, one person's gunk is different than the other person's gunk. So even in a couples retreat, we're working with them individually first. Because what I find is that the thoughts and the emotions that you are generating are typically coming from your gunk. And so if you've got a core wound of I'm not lovable, you are going to just keep on going and finding somebody over and over and over again who is going to trigger that core wound unless and until it's healed. And so even the triggers in a relationship when people are fighting and arguing, that's where the gold is, because it's actually showing you where your unhealed wounds are. And so to be able to bring that up and heal it, that then is where we get rid of and we release the underlying stuff that's causing the thoughts of I'm not good enough, I'll never be happy, or triggering these emotions of frustration and anger and all of that. So that has been so amazing to really discover that actually in 3 or 4 days, we can not only find release and heal the gunk, but we can bring people back from where they are and move them into connection on all the levels: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. So that is really, just a piece that for me has just been so incredibly important.
That is beautiful. And I love that you help people do this. So can you talk a little bit about once you get people to understand what their gunk is and they learn to release it, how do they transition to that nothing is wrong mindset that you talk about?
Well, it is, again, it's about energy.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why the book that my husband and I wrote together is called How to Have a High Vibe Relationship, because it's about staying out of the low vibes. And we all know what the low vibes are: anger, upset, frustration, jealousy, codependency, all that stuff, and doing things to move into the high vibes. And we all know what the high vibes are: love, bliss, joy, peace, harmony. So it's first about finding and releasing and healing that stuff, and then using other processes, because you can't think your way out of it. You can't talk your way out of it. It's about energy. So we're always doing things that have to do with energy. So the finding, the releasing, and healing have to do with moving that energy out, and then using other modalities like tapping, like breath work, like meditation, even movement, yoga, all kinds of different things that can bring you into these higher and faster vibrations. And that's why, as you said, I'm gifting all of your listeners with my book, The Journey to Happy: How Embracing the Concept That Nothing is Wrong Can Transform Your Life. In the book, I have actually 9 processes that you can start doing right now that will really, really help. And when you release those low vibes, what I found is that kind of this easy, simple switching on of the light is to be in that moment of, oh my gosh, nothing is wrong. When we really go into those high vibes of feeling happy and joyful and blissful and peaceful and harmonious, that's when we sit there, and it's like, when we're really there, solidly there, nothing really affects us. Something can happen that is not our preference, and we can still look at it and go, oh, okay, I understand why that's happening. I can see what your opinion is, what your feeling is about this, but it doesn't move you off of your center. And so it really is the idea of all is well. Everything is happening exactly the way that it's supposed to happen, in divine order for my highest and best good. Now, when you can reach that knowing, that is when you really do stay in this very centered space, that no matter what happens, it doesn't knock you off, where you can surf that wave of whatever is going on. And what I've found in my own life is to use just this simple flipping of the switch of nothing is wrong. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't times when things happen where I'm like going, what? No, that, I missed the plane. Terrible, horrible things happening. But when I can sit back and look at it, one of the best examples that I have in my own life is the hardest thing that's ever happened for me is the death of my mother. And she was only 51. I was just in my 20s. I was in law school, and she had been ill with cancer for over 5 years. There was all this stuff going on with her and my father. And it literally is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. But now, all these years later, I look back on that and I can see that, number one, her passing started me on my spiritual path. I mean, there's a direct line. my very stoic and German family finally started saying, I love you to each other after her passing. And then after I was able to drop all my judgment about my father, I was finally able to really come into a really wonderful and loving and accepting relationship of him that I had for almost 20 years before he passed away. So I look back now and I see the gifts that were in this thing that was and still is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And now with everything that I see that in the moment felt like it was a problem or felt like it was something that I didn't want to have happen, I look back and go, oh my gosh, that led me to where I am now. That's exactly what was supposed to happen. Yeah. So I'm sure you have those examples in your own life, Rachel.
No, we all do. And you can't move forward without learning from what happened, right? So if we have this perfect life, we never have anything wrong. I mean, that you see people on social media that make their lives look so incredible. They're doing all these wonderful, incredible things that you wish you could do. And their lives look so perfect. But first of all, they're not.
We all know it's all a lie, right?
We all have gunk. We all have stuff, right? But the thing is that all of those difficult things are what teach us lessons that bring us wisdom to guide us forward. And so if we sit in that gunk and we just feel all the negative energy and the negative feelings, instead of recognizing that, hey, this is happening. I can't change what's happening. This is pretty bad. This is even terrible, horrible. It might even be tragic. But from where you are, like you said, we can change our mindset. We can change our processes. We can change our
energy,
our action, our energy, right? So instead of just sitting there and feeling sorry for yourself, get up, move, do something. Every little step you take is going to bring you more wisdom. It's going to make you feel just a little bit better. And in time, if you keep working at that, it's amazing what you start to feel. You start to notice like, wow, I remember when I left my marriage, and I remember because I was in a very different place. I had already started working on myself for about a year before that. And I remember in my meditation, picturing the dark tunnel, this long dark tunnel that, for a minute I had some fears about. Oh my gosh, just like everyone else, the two biggest fears when you divorce, financial fears and fear of being alone. Am I ever going to, find somebody? And I started thinking about those a little bit, but in my meditation, I would picture this tunnel and I always saw every single time this sliver of light. I never went into the meditation and just saw darkness. I knew the light was there and I felt myself moving toward it. And so the belief that I was doing it, that I wanted to do it, and that I could do it, and the expectation that I was going to get there, I was there. I was on that path. For me, was just a game changer. So my energy started rising. And by the time, at some point in my process, I had a humongous spiritual awakening and my energy was crazy high. I mean, it was fun to watch people react to me sometimes because nothing fazed me. I wasn't judgmental. I was just happy. Everything was beautiful. I saw everything is, you can go outside, you can be pouring and I can see this tree over there and how so beautiful. I mean, it was like almost compared to being on drugs, I guess, which I've never been on drugs, so I don't know. But anyway, I had this incredible awakening experience where I just realized that I have the power to change my life. And I can do whatever I want to do because I believe that I can and I know it's going to happen.
So absolutely. It's the most empowering belief and energy that you can stand for sure.
But, again, for people who are in the space and maybe don't have any wisdom or haven't had any interaction with these concepts and these ideas, and they just feel helpless and lost. That is why I always say, for the majority of people, this isn't a journey you can do on your own. You really need guidance. You need somebody to help because we're all different too. We all, like you said, we all have different gunk. We all have different issues within ourselves. You know, we might be, I don't know, we might have had a bad family experience. We might have been told that we were not good enough our whole lives. We might have very low self-esteem. Whatever it is, everybody has different stuff. And so getting that help is so key. And I love that you have this wonderful, I want to come to your retreat. It sounds so wonderful. But
the most wonderful part about it is that we can do these transformations so quickly. It still amazes me. When I started on my spiritual path, which is way back in the 1980s, everybody talked about that it would take years and years and years to even get to a point of feeling okay. And they would actually talk about, you know, you're going to be slogging through this for the rest of your life. And I feel like there was a shift around the year 2000. And that's when I was starting to come to Sedona, and I started Sedona Soul Adventures in 2002. And now I feel like the energy has just amped up. Yeah. And that's what we see over and over again. I mean, I was in therapy for years. And we have clients who come here who say, oh my God, 3 days with you, I got more out of it than I did in the 3 years that I was in therapy. Because when you are moving the energy and when you're moving out, like the energetic blocks that are holding people back and causing all the trouble, it's amazing. And so, yes, working with someone, the biggest thing is that you can make the process happen so much faster.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's not overwhelming. I think there's a lot of overwhelm when you're coming into that space of leaving a marriage and, you know, I've got to learn to, you know, be healthy, and I learn to let go, and I've got to learn to find a support network and change my thoughts and change my, you know, and all these different things. And it just can get overwhelming. And so a lot of people just give up. So
and the worst part of that is that underlying all of that is the idea of that you somehow have to be different, that you have to change who you really are. And that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is we're uncovering to get down to the real you. And I think of it as a jewel that we have inside us. I think all of us have the spark of the divine in us. And then we're born, we come onto the planet, and all this mud gets splattered all over it, all this gunk. And so it gets so covered up, we can't even feel it. We don't even believe that it's there. We don't know that it's there. And so what we're actually doing is going in and finding and uncovering and getting down to that jewel that is the real you. So that means when that happens, you don't have to do anything except be who you are. And it's kind of amazing how doing that all of a sudden does make people appear to be very different, very much more happy, much more centered, and much more joyful, and much more serene and peaceful. And we have people that go home and they suddenly like drop 20 pounds in 3 weeks after they go home.
Yeah.
And one person did a video about this on YouTube, and she said it was protection weight. And people who, you know, because that's the best part. You don't have to change who you are.
Right.
To get down to who you really are, uncover that, and then be operating from that place.
Yeah. Very wonderful points that you made. And yes, that is so true. And, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of people probably are afraid, I have to change. What do I have to do? And so it's really becoming you. It's becoming who the highest version of you. And I did the same thing. When I started in my journey, I was walking like 6 miles a day, every day with my dog. And the walking helped me in many ways. One, it was kind of a clear my head. I didn't look at my phone when I walked. It was a clear my head process. And I really paid attention to the trees and the blue sky and the clouds and all the things around me. And then I did drop 20 pounds as well, which I wasn't intending to do. And I I've never been overweight my whole life, but in those last few years of my marriage, I put on this, like your client called it protection. I called it, when it went off, I said I was shedding. I was shedding my old self because I was coming into this higher place. And it was a beautiful thing. So
yeah, and it shows up then in every part of your life.
It does.
It shows up with your body. It shows up with your money. It shows up with your work. It shows up in all of your relationships.
Mhm.
And so that is the wonderful thing when you're coming into that energy of connection on all the levels, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, then it shows up in every single part of your life.
Right. Right. That's beautiful. So let's kind of talk about a little bit. You mentioned tapping, and I've wanted to have a podcast on tapping. I still want to do that one day. Maybe, I don't know if you want to come back in time.
I'm on it.
Okay.
So I'll talk about it a little bit now.
So
And then I'd love to come back and do a real one.
I would love that. Let's do a podcast on tapping. So I know it's a great emotional release. And can you give us an example of maybe a move or a couple different types of tapping? And I'll do it with you. You guide me. That can help us when we're feeling stuck or when we're starting this journey and we need to start learning to release the gunk or however.
But what's really great is I've got an explanation in the book, including a diagram of all the tapping places that you can use. And what's really cool is that tapping was actually developed by a therapist who started understanding that if he was doing things with the tapping on acupuncture points, that he was having incredible results with his clients, especially with traumas and fears. And he started off with people who had been so deathly afraid of the water that they wouldn't even go in. And then just after one session of tapping, all of a sudden they would go into a pool. The fear was gone. And this works with absolutely everything. And the easiest way to do it is to tap what is called the karate chop point. You know, that kind of meaty, where if you were doing a karate chop. So just tapping here. And what I do morning, noon, and night, just for a few times, I say, I deeply and profoundly love, accept, and love, accept myself just the way I am.
Myself just the way I am. I love that. That's beautiful. Love and accept myself just the way I am.
I love, accept, and respect myself just the way I am. Now, if you have an issue where, for example, let's say someone is overweight and they don't want to be overweight, they can use the tapping to say, even though I'm overweight, I deeply and profoundly love, accept, and respect myself just the way I am. And when you have the book, you will see there, if you do the full on tapping, it starts with doing this, then at your eyebrows, then under your eyes, then under the nose, then here, then down here, and then under your arm. And if you do that and literally feel what we would call the bad energy of like being overweight, or I feel angry, or I feel upset, or I feel frustrated, or whatever, even though I'm really frustrated and I want to, just get really angry at my husband right now, I deeply and profoundly love, accept, and respect myself just the way I am. You do that for a little bit and it will turn things around. Mm-hmm. And I have had people use tapping with absolutely everything, including weight loss, money, health, just absolutely everything. So it works because you're moving the energy. And when you see the tapping places in my book, these are acupuncture points.
Yeah.
So literally based on Chinese medicine, where you are literally moving the energy. And when you move the energy and shift the energy, incredible things happen. So I'd love to come on and we could do it. We can do a whole round, whatever you want to do. Because I use tapping every single day. And even when I'm like stopped at a stoplight, I'll just go, I deeply and profoundly love, accept, and respect myself just the way I am. So that's kind of the underlying thing that's going on for everybody. When we're out of harmony, it's because we're not accepting ourselves and we're not accepting what is.
Right. Yeah. And I've studied that. I've studied the meridians and I've studied just even the pressure points. And there's also, tapping is so beneficial, as is acupressure and touching some of those, but it's the touch and it's the vibration too. So,
well, as you know, the meridians are there and the energy is there and you're moving the energy. So I keep coming back all the time. It's all about energy and how am I vibrating right now and checking in with myself. And if I'm not vibrating where I want to be, then I will tap and bring myself up to, feeling really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great tool. So thank you for sharing that. I don't know if you have any parting words of wisdom you wish to share. Like I said, we're going to put the links for people to contact you up on the screen. They're going to also be in the show notes for those of you who are listening on the audio channels. And also the link to Debra's book will be there as well. So please download that, and especially if you want to learn more about tapping and more about how to get happy. And if there's anything else you want to share, please do.
What I would say to your listeners is that real and lasting change is possible. And you can have it happen really, really fast. So don't stay in the bad vibes of not feeling good and happy and joyful. Do whatever you have to do to move that energy into the joy and the bliss and the peace and the harmony that literally is your birthright.
Oh, I love that. So beautiful. That just gave me chills. Thank you. Wow, Debra, it's been a pleasure having you here today, and all of your hard work and Sedona Soul Adventures and your books and your help and inspiration that you give to so many thousands of people. Thank you for that.
Rachel, thank you. And, I just want to acknowledge you for the work that you're doing too, because, I know as a divorce attorney for 20 years and with the work that I do now, that the whole divorce thing is so huge and so big. And so I just want to acknowledge you for the work you're doing, because this is really important.
Yeah. My hope is that one day, and we're starting a little bit, we're moving in that direction, but my hope is that one day it won't be such a stigma to get divorced, and we will be able to realize that we're not doing something wrong, leaving the marriage, if that is, what we have chosen to do after obviously great thought. It's not something you do in a nanosecond, but that we will come to a point where we can do things like conscious uncoupling and other methods where people can just support each other instead of being angry at each other and having this horrible drawn out process where the lawyers keep getting rich and the people get angrier and angrier. And I say that because I did family law too. So, but yes, so hopefully we will move in that direction. And I love your work, and thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And I'm excited to have you back to talk about some tapping and provide more wonderful tools for people going through this process.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.